Hey YouTube besties, did you miss me? Sorry, it's been a minute since I've posted. I've just been so busy with everything. You know, I'm in school and all, and I'm busy studying media communications at USC. Okay, fine, I go to UCLA, but whatever, and it's finals and all. I just living my best LA life, you know. I do lots of crazy stuff, like, I go with my friends, we go downtown, go hang out on Santa Monica Boulevard and all that stuff. But I just thought I'd come back with a little makeup tutorial. And actually, this makeup tutorial, it's actually inspired by this cool chick I found online. And I'm like, oh my god, just take a look at her. Her name is Winona, Wylona. It's Wylona Hayashi. Is she Japanese? I don't know. She could be Japanese. She looks like she came out of an anime or something like that. I mean, holy crap, this chick, like, where did she come from? I'm obsessed. You know, she's like, a mix of Elvira meets Twilight or something like that, or Elvira meets Sailor Moon, or I'm just like, oh my god, this chick. Damn, I mean, god. Imagine running into her at a neon nightclub at midnight with a mist going. Oh my fucking god. But anyway, I thought I'd do this look inspired by her. And as you can see, I'm just kind of getting my face together. I'm doing like a spa look. A friend went to Korea and gave me these masks, and, well, I don't know, but she went somewhere in Asia. I'm not sure. Is it Korea? Who knows? China? I don't know. Vietnam? But these masks, supposed to make my skin look younger. You know, gotta compete. The LA sun really just destroys me and all. So yeah, but, so this Wylona chick, like, damn, the looks she turns out, fuck, she needs to be on a billboard. She could be on a billboard on Sunset Avenue and all. I'm just, like, obsessed. Oh, by the way, do you like the new bathroom? I just got renovated. My mom just got a settlement because in her divorce, she found out her third husband, he had a secret account in the Cayman Islands, so she got access to that, and that's the new bathroom you're seeing. And all these great new products. What makeup does Wylona use? I really don't know. Like, how does she get her skin so flawless? I hope this mask can get my skin looking super flawless like that. But yeah, so I'm just doing it. Yeah, so if you're wondering, I've been busy with finals at, okay, fine, I go to CSULA, but, I almost got to UCLA if I had just done better on my SATs, and by done better, I mean pass my SATs. But yeah, so studying media communications, but I kind of want to be a brand consultant. I see other YouTubers getting brands and shit, but I'm like hoping, I can get a brand or deal or something, so someone sponsor me and everything. But yeah, this look is inspired by Wylona. I mean, my hair is already black, I don't have to dye it, but yeah, I wonder what Wylona does. Like, seriously, like, so fucking gorgeous, just a flawless chick. Like, you see her and you want to talk to her, but you know she's dangerous. She's a dangerous woman, damn it. A dangerous woman. Like, she's like if Ariana Grande went goth or something like that. But what a freaking look. So yeah, I'm just living my best life. Trying to get more into posting YouTube and YouTube tutorials and all that kind of stuff, and getting everything together. This is my look, my foundation look. I hope it's flawless enough for you. I want to get that flawless skin Wylona has. Oh my freaking god, it's intense. And then I'm going to be doing an eye look or something like that. Okay, so this is my outfit for the night. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Looking cool? Looking metropolitan? Looking cosmopolitan? Looking some other kind of politan? My mom got me the pants from, I don't know, one of her weird-ass cruise sex tours or something, somewhere else. She goes after every single divorce and all, and probably picked up some guy or some captain or something. The jacket is from my dad, but I don't really know which one, if it's my bio dad or one of her early husbands or someone who called me dad, but said he was my dad, but really just a fling or something, just so it wouldn't be awkward. Shalom, shalom, hello, and thank you for sitting through that very long intro. I know that was kind of a lot, but there was a point to me creating that whole odd character. I wanted to give a good feel of what it was like in early makeup YouTube, and when people were really actually using YouTube in the early stages to express themselves. Not post random clips, not post
dumb videos or repost something else they found on the internet, but actually use it as a form of expressing themselves, of real artists taking YouTube seriously and actually performing their art, and thus seeing what inspiration they're pulling from. I would say the early stages of real internet inspiration, and not just whatever was mainstream celebrity tabloids or magazines at the time. I find it so strange that, I guess not strange, but, well, strange and fascinating and amazing that someone like Wylona served as such a big inspiration for the underground internet art scene in its early stages, when it was finally being accepted as a viable genre on social media and not something that weird kids were into. Not something that, oh, why do you like that and not this? Why do you turn to weird internet forums for inspiration to be fascinated with makeup and fashion instead of celebrity magazines? And people were getting respect for it. So I really appreciate that. And I'm doing a video on Wylona because I've mentioned her in 2 videos already, and it's like, I think she deserves her own video, even though it's not quite related to my channel. Well, I think it is in some ways. I think she does it. I mean, come on. It's someone needs to do a video on her. Because for someone who maybe wasn't the biggest underground internet celebrity of the Tumblr era and other art forums era, my god, she has left a mark, which is so fascinating because she has left such a big mark for such an anonymous figure. I really want to go into that anonymity and kind of make up the structure, find the substance and structure of what made Wylona Wylona. When doing basic research on her, what stood out to me is that she just seemed to have popped up out of nowhere. Like that photo set you saw in my intro, those are some of the most recognized pictures of her, and they are her signature pictures. They're go-to pictures people look at that encapsulate her style and everything she stood for. But it's interesting because she got so famous, got such a level of respect and notoriety in underground internet art scene in the early days of social media that was finally accepting and fostering that community. But we never really got to know her. We never heard her even talk, which is so strange. She never even wrote about herself. So this video isn't really Wylona's story. I'm just telling you that up front, spoiler alert, because you know, I don't want you to be disappointed and like get the big reveal of who is Wylona. She has no story. She was just Wylona and people loved her. Wylona fell into a rare camp of celebrities of which less was more. You enjoy projecting onto them without the feeling of trying to compensate for whatever you're feeling shortchanged about in your life. You wanted to project your ideal person onto them, but not out of any sense of inadequacy that you were having. Some of you might know what I'm talking about. Think back to the early days of YouTube. You might have seen someone your age who posted a few videos here and there for fun, but had no intention of consistently making content. So you're left wondering about that person. Like, what is their life like? Could you be friends with that person in real life? And that's a sentiment only Tumblr heavily enhanced. And I've gone into the contrast between Tumblr and YouTube and how the celebrities were very different in a lot of ways. You can see my previous videos on those. But I'm not here to talk about the Wylona fandom, though they are a key point in understanding Wylona. Wylona was a master at feeding into the mystery of herself, not the usual way influencers have done. Instead of hinting at a scandal or causing clout or playing the victim, Wylona curated herself into essentially being a living meme, essentially. So that seems like a very ridiculous way to become a celebrity, especially in the fashion sphere, but understand the right circumstances happened for her. If you want a more viable example, think back to the early stages of Kylie Jenner's brand, Kylie Cosmetics. Yes, that multi-million-dollar brand that came from the one member of the K clan that rivals Kim. People talk about Kylie Jenner and her entrepreneurial and billionaire status and her big makeup company, and well, her faking a billionaire status and whatever, and how she truly is an example of a big business being born from social media. People are forgetting a huge part of the story, actually. Kylie Cosmetics started off as a big internet joke. So for those who don't remember, those who forgot or whatever, people remember that, you know, the brand started with the lip kits, which were modeled after Kylie's iconic lips that were made from lip injections. She got lip injections allegedly at like 15. She kept denying it, but it was very obvious, and it turned into a big attention on her lips, which of course became the marketing tool for Kylie Cosmetics. And I mean, that's a big part in the jumpstart of her brand. Again, her lips became a signature look like many models and fashion figures, so of course a brand came off of it. But there's another key component that seems to be forgotten. It was the Kylie Lip Challenge. That was the challenge which people stuck to their mouths a cup, sucked out the air to stretch their lips out, and then pulled it off the cup, and it damaged their skin. People just seem to have forgotten that was a thing. It was as crazy a thing as the Ice Bucket Challenge, or the Cinnamon Challenge, or a bunch of other weird challenges. But that was a challenge, it really was. And yes, Kylie's lip brand, which eventually evolved into her big makeup brand, became a thing because people were damaging their lips as a joke to spoof Kylie Jenner. So with the exception of TikTok, that kind of slapstick marketing I don't think would really work today, because people, when they shop for a brand, they want meaning out of it, especially with all the indie brands coming out and everything. I don't think starting a big multi-million, billion-dollar brand would work if you're basically capitalizing off a joke that was never really that funny to begin with. I think the last person to benefit from that viral cringe humor was Bad Baby, and there will always be some exceptions, of course. So what does this all have to do with Wylona? I think Wylona knew just how to be ridiculous enough to leave an impression, but not too out there such that her fans were only gawkers. A lot of people who liked Felice Fawn, who I did a video on, they liked Wylona also. I would say Felice was a little bit like the TLC reality show that cranks out multiple seasons and a year and spin-offs. Wylona was that Netflix show that occasionally dumps out a season sporadically every few years, but people still talk about it for years to come. Although anonymous celebrities I don't think fly as much as today as they did, there are some exceptions like Alexa Demi of Euphoria. So let's talk about Wylona's curation. There are a few factors at play. We have her fashion, her photography, her discretion, her influences, and her communities. I believe she knew all of these very well and used them to her advantage. So let's go into each one. Wylona's closet. The early 2010s, we saw the dying out of OG fashion bloggers, or they were, I guess, more nightlife/hotspot blogs that kind of broke into the fashion industry of like, what do you wear to this? What do you wear to that, to this event? The early increase of social media and usage to show off a lifestyle and fashion definitely pulled a lot of fashion inspiration from people who curated outfits specifically to show off online. That's why we got a lot of, well, in the early 2010s, layering, heavy makeup, statement jewelry, wedges for days. Oh my god, so many wedges. Does anyone remember the wedge craze? Pastel hair, crazy sunglasses, and cardigans. That's everyday style. For the fashion social media fanatics who wanted to skew more into a niche theme, they would pull inspiration from more fantasy elements, which ranged from anime, a new wave of Cartoon Network cartoons like Adventure Time, DIY craft, music festival fashion, and maybe even kink roleplay. I think a lot of these sub-influencers that specifically served social media fashion were an interesting moment in time because they were very short-lived. But they embodied so many of the values we look into the fashion industry for today. Alternative styles specific for social media in the early 2010s were new goth, hipster grunge, rejuvenated skater fashion for more, I think, the longboarding and beach kind of crowd, upscale beach fashion, interpretations of whatever Lady Gaga, Nicki Minaj, and Katy Perry were wearing, as well as even a little bit of what Justin Bieber and Bruno Mars had. Oh, and we can't forget Lana Del Rey. And of course, there was a new wave of Disney cosplayers thanks to Frozen. A lot of these microtrends were killed or very heavily weakened because in the mid to late 2010s, a new wave of social media influencers they obliterated a lot of the OG ones, and they were pulling inspirations from early social media influencers whose content came from more personal style, not plugged into like a greater art ecosystem. Because the late 2010s, we had a much younger demographic of people becoming influencers, teens, and they were pulling more from what like childhood inspirations, which was more of a personal style because they weren't really old enough to really pay attention to the fashion ecosystem going on in the world. But within those mini social media trends of the early 2010s I just mentioned, they're interesting because due to a lack of a pressure to become a brand at the time, they were more unrestricted than what we see today in terms of everyday wear, or what's supposed to pass as everyday wear. That unrestriction is fascinating. It could be problematic because it really ventured into the territory of cultural appropriation, lack of class consciousness, plagiarism, fat phobia, and girl boss crap. But unrestrictedness was a huge part of Wylona. For someone who kept her identity so private, I'm shocked she made such a lasting internet impact with the crazy eyelashes and wigs and contacts, only with a limited set of pictures and nothing else. Yet her pictures kept snowballing and serving as inspiration for getting admiration for years to come. Wylona was a force that couldn't be stopped, and she wasn't even trying that hard.
Can I ask you something? Sure. Has it ever crossed your mind that you're far too young for me?
Maybe to get famous. Maybe she was putting a lot of effort into these pictures. As I said, unrestricted came into play, but not from her, from what she came to represent. While she was always identified as niche, semi-gothic, her aesthetic blended in with a lot of other subcultures in fashion and modeling, which kept her name online even when she wasn't as active. I talked a lot about the fashion ecosystem a lot because unless you really know what it's like to be a person who is drawn to fashion as a way to express your fantasy, it's very different than just, oh, personal style, how do I look cute today for work? You won't know how much Wylona fit the mold of the cool friend you wished you could have in real life. That kind of mentality is going to make you open to all kinds of weirder fashion that you really admire on people because they have the courage to put it on themselves and at least pass it off like that's what they wear in real life more than you do. While the OG fashion influencers were pretty mainstream in taste, the bloggers that came before, because they were more nightlife, daily life, more like out in the city kind of stuff, because they were much older at the time, they could be really out there. Like, think of how Tavi Gevinson used to dress, or Brian Boy. They kind of started off parodying the fashion industry, saying F you to it, you don't represent me, but then they were taken seriously eventually. Also, at the time, internet fashion had Polyvore and a score of personal styling games to fit your more regular needs, so I guess they filled that gap. So you had a mix of expecting to be out there, but also wanting to find a good resource for real clothes, other than 17 Magazine or Cosmopolitan. So Wylona had a really great middle ground between those two I just mentioned, between the urge to be really out there, but also want to skew more practical, because you don't want to look like you're just thinking it's Halloween 24/7.
In an Uber to the airport, Terminal 3, a couple carry-on bags, please don't weigh these. Well, what do? A little don't rate me, meet me and my brother, we flying down for the weekend. We got an Airbnb by the beach, have you been there? Come hit a party if you speak French. Well, are we gonna be friends? So positive, of course, we're looking to recruit for the party crew. The name's JJ, co-star is Bruce, then we love a little green like Molly do. Yeah, got a feeling it's season, you and me can jump in, see you in the...
And Tumblr fashion, you could argue, was never really that practical, but it filled a void left behind by the MySpace years for a social media site with a more personal touch. That also was a little bit crazy, and again, the morals were a little bit loose in almost everything from culture to sex to aesthetics, you name it. I think because of Tumblr, how it was kind of a cross between maybe your somewhat generic influencer you expect to treat as a celebrity and someone to be more relatable, Wylona served more as a living mood board than a fashion society figure, especially since she didn't show much of her social side online, if any. The early 2010s, we really saw a switch from celebrities to average fashionable people online who served as fashion inspiration, not even people who were famous online necessarily. I would say early 2010s, we just saw a very specific set of alternative creators, kinds that were more conscious of how their looks translated into social media in a story narrative. And Tumblr fashion, since it was supposed to serve the average people, even if it didn't really that much, it had to skew more practical but still be a little bit boundary pushing. That's why we got so many statement piece trends, like jewelry. I mean, does anyone remember that? And also extreme nail art, that was also a thing on Tumblr for a little while. So you can see here Wylona did venture into fashion more photography pieces, like actually featuring something other than just her face. So Like, you know, cute little fashion-y items, and even though it wasn't her main focus, she was very on point with it, I think, very on trend for the many styles. And even more underground artists at the time, like Halsey, Janelle Monáe, Curation, they were wearing hipster chic clothes that featured some serious statement elements of their own in addition to their casual wear. I talked about the early 2010 microtrends and how they were more unlimited because there wasn't the pressure to become a brand because influencer wasn't as much a thing. And it was fine if your clothes were more art online than practical wear, even if it was supposed to still kind of be seen as practical wear by proxy. What's interesting about those pictures is while Wylona never changed her style much, in the early days of her fame, she was more experimental. So these pictures I'm showing you, they skew more fantasy witchy. Which I think again in around 2013 was the perfect time for that to be out there, because again that's just when online Tumblr fashion was supposed to kind of fuel your fantasy of what your ideal life would be, but since it's still supposed to be your life, it's still got to have some practical elements, so it can't be too much like you're living in the Sailor Moon universe. I think you could classify Wylona's fashion at the time as new goth or alt-rocker style. I saw someone describe her as grunge and glamour, which I think is the perfect term that would have been available for her at the time, though now I think she would just be considered e-girl. Her makeup never really crossed the line into goth, and her clothes were too understated. I think if she went full goth, she would have blended too much with the other Tumblr photographers. Keeping her fashion low-key, or more low-key for that kind of genre, was perfect because she reminds you, again, of the cool college girl who knows all the parties, and not just someone who's desperate for attention online because they don't want to grow up. I want to also add, she was the queen of Facetune before Facetune was a thing. I mean, her picture was Instagram aesthetics before Instagram was really Instagram. Early fashion Tumblr actually relied on pulling posts from Instagram to curate their blogs into proper pages. It's kind of ironic since now Instagram is all about pulling from other online sources. For Instagram fashion pages pull from like a lot of other online websites, but it's interesting, that cycle. Wylona already being on Tumblr and kind of being plugged into Tumblr culture was a huge bonus, because Wylona's, well, her Tumblr and her pictures, it essentially felt like a complete blog already that other people wanted to create. Also keep in mind, because like TikTok, Tumblr is about reblogging Wylona's picture means you really cared about high fashion or alternative high fashion, or as high fashion as alternative could possibly get. So that would also help you and make your blog look nicer as well, because you discovered this cool underground chick, then, you know, that means, oh, you must be cool also. But it's the e-girl that makes the clothes, not the clothes that makes the e-girl. Or it's the girl that makes the e and not the e, I don't know, however you want to describe it. Since influencer wasn't a word in Wylona's time, what could we call her? Another Tumblr girl, a fame whore? I always thought calling yourself a model in a social media age is weird, because you're not modeling for a company or a campaign, you're just modeling yourself and hoping to attract campaigns to sponsor you. I think a model in the classic sense does actually fit what Wylona was doing. But what kind of model was Wylona? Was she fetish, freak show, fantasy, cross between all of them? I have another F word to use on Wylona. No, it's not that. Get that dirty word out of your head. Figurative. She modeled the not an aspirational life, but an alternative life. The kind of life you would assume she lived, the equivalent to like watching a cooking show, because you don't have the skills to do that stuff yourself. So let's talk about the experience and satisfaction of over-simping on an anonymous model online in a non-sexual way. Wylona's fulfillment. So how does a figurative model work? The closest example you all know is cosplayers. Cosplayers are modeling a character without advertising the brand they're wearing. maybe the show or movie, but that isn't a brand in itself. Cosplayers are models who emulate a work of art without selling anything. Wylona wasn't cosplaying a character, she was cosplaying a caricature, as in an archetype of the cool rich city girl trying to look underground, and she did it so well that a lot of people didn't care if it was fake. In a way, it reminds you of, say, that rich spoiled brat who went to private schools on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, but at night she sneaks out of her parents' penthouse apartment, just says fuck you to the school uniform, dresses up in sexy clothes with a fake ID, and then goes downtown to the East Village to go ahead to all the nightclub parties, like what Paris Hilton did in her teen years, as the documentary showed. In a way, I think Wylona was the professional photography version of Tana Mongeau. Like I said, her borderline cartoonishness with her looks was just ridiculous enough for people who enjoyed make-believing a character to really get into her, invest in her, without actually acknowledging that's what they were doing, admiring a really heavily embellished character. But even though Wylona set the standard for the living anime girl look, which I've kind of talked about in other videos, a look that would later be boosted by Anastasia Shvagina and Amaranth, and a whole other bunch of Sailor Moon fans, Wylona wasn't actually part of that community. She wasn't supposed to give off the impression she was wearing a digital costume. She was just your average alt-fashion girl who happened to give off Alita-like features. Because of her unusual and fictional features, combined with her fashion, which was very in line with the subgenre that had a very big fan base, she had an advantage of being the fantasy closest to the reality, but just out of reach, unless you get surgeries and spend hours doing your makeup, like this drag queen. And you might be thinking, who falls for this stuff? I mean, who's curious enough about someone like that, of this random emo chick? A lot of people on Tumblr were very lonely and had a hard time socializing. Tumblr was the best place to have a digital imaginary friend. Me personally, I actually did make legitimate friends off Tumblr. But because of the unfilteredness of that platform at the time, there were a lot of bloggers I do wish I could have been friends with because they seemed like the only people who could empathize with me. Wylona's pictures and the little she did reveal about herself filled the gap for that friend you wish you could have the circumstances to meet in real life. Gothic, dark, without being seen as weird, sexually liberated without being written off as a slut or fetishized for her bisexuality, living an easy life in the big city without flaunting possible wealth and privilege. But I've talked about all these Tumblr audiences that were yearning for what Wylona happened to fill. She couldn't have been the only one who benefited from the circumstances that made someone like her so big. All these hidden trends that were raging on at the time, or even in parts of the rest of the internet. So I see TikToks now of saying, oh, the so-and-so kind of girl just hits different. Well, here are some of the other Tumblr girls that hit different and gained momentum on the platform at the time. Molly Soda, Erica Balls, Chloe Harwood, Yulima, Amelia Stardust, and I think most notably all of you know, Acacia Brindley. All of those I just mentioned posted much more often than Wylona did, but their style skewed more preppy-ish. Wylona, being a non-disturbing figure who had dipped in goth, emo, grunge, demonic anime, mystical punk, rock, nightlife, and hipster looks, she had them all to herself, all those sub-communities. And she didn't have any disturbing qualities that were apparent on other Tumblr figures in those communities, or at least all of her qualities were seen as much better. And then there was her art skills, which also gave her another advantage. A good Tumblr at the time was seen as like a digital coffee table book, and Wylona had that down.
So, I actually managed to get some of her Tumblr restored in the Wayback Machine. So she had quite a few different Tumblr accounts. This Wylona/Hayashi was one of her main Tumblr accounts, so I managed to get a little bit of it back up through the Wayback. So this is from 2013. Actually, she produced quite a few more text posts than I initially thought, though not much compared to others. So here you go, you can see the stuff she put in. That's actually interesting, some rarer pictures of her that I didn't see on the general internet. So let's look at some of what she wrote. Please post your favorite photos of G-Dragon or just ones that you like. Thank you.
And then, let's see, we also have, what do you think about Skrillex? Someone's asking, and his music are not bad. And let's see, what else do we have here? I'd like to be your friend, even though we'll never know whether it'll last or not. I want to try, I want to be a part of. Okay, that's a submitted question, but I can't see what she answered. Let's see. What you doing all day, someone asks. And she wrote, you mean for only today? She replied. Again, she liked to be mysterious, so she really didn't reveal a lot and went out of her way to make sure nothing too much was revealed. Let's see, she wrote, to that last message, yes, I thought so. When I look on your photos, it's obvious like maybe you have pals but not real friends, honestly. And yeah, with her pictures, there were some pictures of her with other people, but we don't really know of anyone important in her life other than a possible boyfriend. And then someone asked, if you could change one thing about you, what would you change? And she wrote, I want to be in Japan or Korea right now. Okay, yes, we all know that. Well, let's see. So she wrote a decent amount. Okay, that's all I could get there. Okay, so now we're at 2014. Actually, quite a variety of stuff she reblogged. She definitely liked nature. That confirms it with some of the other surviving material from her Tumblr. So nothing really text posts. Yeah, she wasn't writing much, or taking, at this point, many submitted questions and answers, possibly to avoid being made fun of by, the forums and stuff. But it's still very interesting. Okay, so here she wrote, Tumblr should quickly make, once photo is deleted by owner, it should be gone from all blogs. If not, what's the point of deleting? Also make a mass editor for likes that can unlike all at once. Seriously, do your job. So obviously, some of the material I was able to recover, it's because other people reblogged stuff from her Tumblr, so even though her Tumblr is gone, the reblogged images from her Tumblr still remain, so she's upset and wants those to go as well. Again, probably because she was getting busted for Photoshop. But yeah, look at these pictures. They're very foresty and very calm and tranquil. Interesting.
So Wylona knew how to fuel Tumblr users' daydreams, but let's talk about her formula of fakeness. Wylona's camera. Okay, so I'll just give it up to you right here, all of Wylona's bad Photoshop jobs. Here's either what's closer to the real Wylona looked like, a lot of these pictures were from when she was much younger. My guess is maybe MySpace days when she was more pure scene or emo kid. It's interesting because some of the influencers who heavily use face filters and Photoshop get followers and others get dragged for being a fame whore. Wylona was ripped apart for her Photoshop usage from day one, but it didn't stop her. Why? Because Wylona kept her to herself and she was so anonymous, she came off as someone who wasn't trying to emotionally milk her followers like most of the other tragic Tumblr celebrities at the time. Her Photoshop came off as a genuine devotion to the art of fashion instead of trying to pass off a persona off as real. Wylona didn't care if people bought her or not. I mean, she just basically gave off a I'm not here for the haters vibe. She was pure aesthetics, which was a refresher from the horrible confessional posts that were flooding your Tumblr dashboard. And as I said, she was the master of Facetune before anyone really knew what that was. She could have been Facetune's spokesperson. But there also is still something I think that comes into play when people seek out male or female thirst traps online or to lust over. Racial ambiguity. I've spoken a lot about Wylona whitewashing herself and the upcry it caused and how the entire online identity was built on looking inhuman and defying her Asian heritage despite also being proudly Asian, and even the Asian side she flaunted was a lie. So before I go into that more, I do have to insert my own biases and experiences here. When it comes to racial ambiguity, real or fake, people are always going to wonder about you. They're going to wonder your ethnicity, and by extension, what your cultural background is, the culture you grew up in, and what language you spoke at home, and maybe what religion you practice, and what community do you associate with. That's been the case with me, and I'm not faking my appearance. This is my natural looks. But people think I'm from all around the fucking world. And then they want to get to know my parents, which I may not want to talk about, or my grandparents even. And if I had a childhood that's typical with the heritage that is associated with a certain culture. Like, I get it, people are always going to be curious, and I've never took it as like being racist or anything like that. But I have been tempted to make up another persona with a different name and a different backstory just so I don't get more probing questions. I have to wonder how people got a hold of Wylona's unedited pictures. I know a huge reason for the Photoshop was they just found older pictures of her from childhood. They might have gotten those from a personal Facebook page. Wylona had a few different Facebook pages, and I take it one of them was her original real one when she was going by her real name before she invented the Wylona persona. I wonder if her old pictures were discovered. Maybe Wylona herself leaked a lot of her unedited photos that were more current just to cause a stir. I don't know how else people could have gotten a hold of the before pictures of her as an adult. Yes, they could have reverse edited them, but the ones that exposed her Photoshop, what I found interesting were the lesser famous pictures of her. So I think she leaked them herself on one of her many Facebook pages, and maybe that one she leaked that was a Facebook page of hers she just had disguised as a fan account. It's interesting because when reading about the complaints about Photoshop, it's absent of the usual rhetoric that she's harming the self-image of young girls that we usually hear when people complain about celebrities who heavily Photoshop. It was just like, what the hell's going on with her? Why does she do that? Again, because she wasn't super new goth or super punk or whatever, her pictures weren't considered art by everyone. You had to really be into the glamour gunge, goth, hipster chic, or rock, or whatever subgenre you might have considered her to be in, to know she was embodying a character and was heavily inspired by the underground fashion scene. Was Wylona a wannabe fashion girl catering to the not like other girls on Tumblr? Yes. But was she the best at all those annoying tropes I just mentioned? Also yes. I do think Wylona whitewashing herself was problematic, but also I do see why she felt at liberty to do so. As I said, people think I'm from all around the world. Some people are never going to get my heritage because the idea of somebody marrying outside their background race and it is just still very weird and shocking. So I've been tempted to just annoy people more by just making my heritage even more confusing if they really piss me off. And if you are white and Asian, there's even a bigger pressure to just identify as one. Like, pick one, which are you? And honestly, a lot of people are gonna pick the one that has more privileges, whichever that might be depending on the circumstance. I'm not saying that's right, but when you're mixed heritage, sometimes you can't win. You might as well have as much fun with the game as possible if you're forced to play it. What I do find strange though about Wylona's scandals is we never really learned more about her when they started to come out. Usually when even minor internet celebrities have scandals like Wylona, the sleuths start digging and we find more about their personal lives. That wasn't the case with Wylona. She still remained anonymous. I think in part because her fans just didn't care. And what's even more fascinating is for a Tumblr girl fan base, a fan base really heavily known for really digging deep and really spreading around the tea, spilling the tea. They didn't care about Wylona's scandals. They were pretty innocent. And I don't mean innocent as in dumb or ignorant. I mean that Wylona's fan base was not the typical Tumblr girl fan base, which could get very toxic, as I'm sure many of you know. They seem to consist of just a pure fashion fan base. And Tumblr was known for just drawing in the crazies. I mean, there's a lot of videos on the Tumblr toxic fan bases. Wylona's fan base just seemed to be pretty average internet fashion fans that you'd find on Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at the time. Yeah, I mean, Facebook and Twitter did have a bit of a fashion community in the early 2010s as well. Like I said, not much was ever really uncovered about Wylona other than she was a native of Singapore. Her real name was Lim Pei Shi, and she's half white, half Chinese. She claimed to have Japanese ancestry, which is why we have the last name Hayashi, but that got debunked pretty quickly.
Anonymous asked, your real name is Lim Pei Shi? Yeah, that's my name, Wylona Lim Pei Shi. Hayashi is my dad's surname and I follow my mom's. Trying to bring people down this way ain't cool because look at all the stage names celebs have. What's the fuss, man? Chill out, yo. Jealous because I can't even prove my ID and such, but that's what's the point to someone who can't even face me. I pity you people. I am mixed Chinese too, of course. I have a Chinese name. Her real name is Wylona Lim Pei Shi. The Chinese character for Lim can be translated to Hayashi in Japanese, which in turn loosely means forest. She's out of her Wapanese phase now and wants to be white probably. Her current boyfriend Adam is an ex-con, has a child with a woman somewhere whom he never visits. Wylona has A+ tastes in men. Well, I guess while we're on the topic of Wylona's social life, she never really showed many other people in her pictures. And usually if there was someone else featured in her pictures, it was another hot girl who she would pose sexually with or just kiss. I think she was trying to go for bisexual cool kind of stuff. So a very minor criticism I saw of her was she was queer baiting, but I think that was like a very, very, very minuscule criticism. I don't know what her sexuality actually was. But also, it does appear she did have a boyfriend. I guess his name is Adam. Nothing much on him, but yeah, he looks very much like what you'd expect a boyfriend to look like for her based on her fashion and aesthetics alone.
How her real name got leaked, I have no idea either. Like I said, she had a few Facebook pages, so I think just one of them was her original one before she converted them. I couldn't find any trace of what Wylona did in her daily life, which we never got much of. Like, what did she have friends? The only thing I could pull was she attended this rock concert.
Okay, I could not figure out what this concert is. This On the Rock live at Singapore, 22nd November, the Coliseum. I legit could not figure out what band that was or what event. If anyone recognizes them, let me know.
I find it interesting, despite Wylona being in Singapore, we don't even get to see much of Singapore. I don't know why. I guess she didn't want it obvious that she lived in Asia, even though that was like no secret.
So this is probably one of the most common posts that survived from Wylona's original Tumblr, that because it was reblogged so many times. You can see here it's like a spread out paneled picture of various night skies, categorized inner city sky, suburban urban transition, suburban sky, rural sky, excellent dark sky sight, commentary on light pollution from cities, obviously, and the caption she put was, Singapore is the first photo, which pretty much sucks. So she's expressing how she doesn't like how there's so much light pollution in her home city because she can't see the stars in the sky. This might be the only acknowledgement from herself, actually, that she lives in Singapore, and also expresses, I guess, how she doesn't like cities that much, or she's just more of a nature girl. That just seems to be the impression overall, and this kind of confirms it.
I think she just always wanted to cater to a Western audience. I tried looking her name up in Mandarin and nothing came up. Then again, English is one of the official languages of Singapore, so, I mean, that didn't surprise me. In fact, Wylona seemed to hate cities. She loved nature.
Followers don't seem to appreciate nature or me a lot more because seems like it's not getting the love it should get at all since it went down, because I'm really dealing with a lot now, but will be back for work as soon as I can.
Despite obvious fakery and little actual content, Wylona's star power grew pretty quickly. I talked about how the fashion space she occupied had a lot more impact in its, that she benefited from. And the same goes with the wider internet space she put herself in. Wylona's keyboard. As I said in my previous videos of Wylona, what social media platform that made her so big? Specifically, it's hard to track which one of them we can credit for her fame. I thought it was all of them because she was just posting herself everywhere and it stuck. That still seems to be true, but I found something interesting. There's one platform that gave her a massive boost, and it's not what you'd expect. So I think there is an advantage for internet figures who want to cater to a Western audience but don't actually live in the West. Wylona had access to other platforms that aren't as mainstream but had the technological backing similar to Facebook and Instagram essentially. Essentially, another way she was a big fish in a small pond, but not in the art side, in the technology side. So there's actually a lot of social media sites that are in wide use that a lot of us here in the United States or in the Western world are not aware of. Maybe some of you know that WhatsApp is pretty popular in other countries for groups and texting. Another example, I read an article that in places like Russia and China, the messaging app Telegram is very popular. And you can be an influencer on there. It's like the equivalent of having a digital newsletter. Why? Because Telegram is encrypted, it's harder to track, which means you can dodge the heavy media regulation policies of those countries. I read somewhere that in Russia, there's Telegram fashion influencers that like to just send articles on fashion through Telegram that may be more risque or violate the cultural restriction policies, which is weird because Telegram isn't a visual platform, but it works. People adapt how they can. Another example is sometimes I live stream on an app called LiveMe, which is like Twitch and Omegle combined. LiveMe is barely used here in the United States. It's more popular in Asia, and I think in South America and the United Kingdom, and a little bit of Eastern Europe. At least that's where the people I match with are from most of the time. But there are influencers who are making bank on it because the competition isn't as bad. It's wide enough that there is an audience you can gain, but it also isn't too competitive that your chances are like heavily reduced. So I found this platform called WeHeartIt, which is basically it's a photo sharing site like Flickr or PhotoBucket. I did a quick lookup on the platform. I'm not a tech drama channel here, but there should be more of those. Well, there should be more of those. So this isn't an in-depth analysis of WeHeartIt. It was founded in Brazil in 2013. It moved to the United States, but it doesn't seem to be operational. Its headquarters isn't operational in the United States anymore. It's still widely used and it actually has influencers, but I would say its primary demographic, like LiveMe, is outside of the US. Around 2013, there were actually quite a few smaller social media companies trying to capitalize on the success of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Some of them you might remember, like Snapchat, and some of them you might have forgotten, like YouNow and Wattpad. Of course, we can't forget Pinterest as well. Does anyone, by the way, remember Daily Booth, Path, Periscope, and a ton of other Patreon knockoffs? Also Yik Yak and SocialCam? Oh, and group chat apps. The point is, early 2010 social media platforms that never really became household names were actually a great place to build a small but very devoted audience that could be transferred to a larger platform that would give you a boost on that larger platform, much like how Viners did onto YouTube back in the day. And that's what happened to Wylona on WeHeartIt. So WeHeartIt's closest sibling in how it functions, you could say, is a lot like Pinterest. Now, WeHeartIt, the company, was trying to get bigger by cross-promoting on Pinterest. So WeHeartIt, this photo sharing site, had an account on Pinterest, another photo sharing site. Wylona didn't appear to ever have an account on WeHeartIt, but she was big on that site. Oh my god. And again, because of the smaller demographic, that generally is going to be looking for more or less the same thing because it's not big enough to have too many sub-communities, one thing can go way more viral on there. Like a small town mentality, something travels fast. I've never seen so many different pictures of Wylona on one digital space other than WeHeartIt. They even have some of the rarer pictures of her. pretty sure the We Heart It staff saw Wylona's pictures going viral on their own platform, and they decided to post a feature on her. And that feature was on We Heart It's official Pinterest page. We Heart It's Pinterest account has 15 million followers. I doubt it had that many back in 2013 to 14, but they featured Wylona on their Pinterest many, many, many times as a way to funnel traffic to their own platform. And of course, if you're gonna search for gothic fashion on Pinterest, and the results are gonna be the most followed accounts. And since We Heart It, being its own company with its own marketing team and its own fashion ecosystem going in there, of course, when you're there, pictures of Wylona on the Pinterest account are gonna pop up as the search results, and there's so many. So I think that's how Wylona became partly so viral, because people on Pinterest were looking for alt-goth fashion, and We Heart It, trying to funnel traffic to their own website, and seeing Wylona was going viral on their own website, tried to then make sure Wylona would be featured in other places that could funnel more traffic because they saw she was so popular, and hopefully they were going to get other fans that would have enjoyed the same content their existing users were already enjoying. So they featured Wylona on Pinterest. Wylona's pictures would be at the top of the search results on Pinterest from the We Heart It account. I know it's kind of crazy how internet traffic gets funneled. And the best part for Wylona is if you see if the first time you see a picture of Wylona is on 2 different third-party accounts that are cross-posting, you want to know more about her. So you're going to Google her. And if you Google her, all of her social media handles are going to be at the top result, and you're going to go through all of them. If you discovered her on Instagram, you're going to only want to get to know her purely through Instagram and not anything else. So the likelihood of filtering to her other social media accounts is much lower. But because, again, of the teeny demographic that became so devoted to her through a small platform, and that platform itself tried to capitalize on that mini virality by then pushing that content to a bigger platform to get more traffic, hopefully, to please and draw similar fans, it then spreads Wylona's image everywhere and makes her more mini viral across other platforms, thus generating more curiosity on her, and the new fans are going to want to be able to seek more of her out themselves, outside of the platforms that then pushed her image. But even with all this curiosity, all you're left is with more anonymous images of her without actually getting to know the person. I really wonder if any one of Wylona's fan bases went a little bit crazy at not being able to find any revealing information on her. I know I would have. Or even just a little bit on her personality. But since I'm just so crazy, here's everything I wish I could have known. Wylona's Why Lost It. I tried breaking through the mysterious barrier and I couldn't find anything. I came up dry. I don't even know how old Wylona is. Most likely she was born in either 93 or 94. I read somewhere that the name Wylona came from Winona, as in Winona Ryder, but I couldn't find anything to back that up. It's very clear she likes nature, and I think that could explain the earlier looks where she was more mythical. In fact, one of her Tumblrs was called Wylona Forest. There's posts of her admiring nature. More importantly, I wondered, when did the Wylona persona begin? I read somewhere that's also hard to track. 2013 to 2015 were her golden years. She had been active on social media for much longer before that. Her original Instagram hit its peak at 100,000 followers in 2016. I found this video of someone making fan art of her, and the account with Wylona's name replied to it asking for the picture, and others verified that was really her. So this is the channel Wylona ran, which did belong to her, and I think it's her oldest social media that's still active. It used to be called Wylona Hayashi, and I'll go into the name Wylona Rin later. That YouTube account, according to the Wayback Machine, only had 2 short videos, so again, nothing really giving more revealing on Wylona. And those videos are down, but I'm pretty sure this is what those videos contain. And like I said, even Wylona's biggest scandals didn't reveal more on her like they normally would have with other people. The biggest scandal she had was there was a Facebook post circulating of her using the N-word when making a joke about her mother. So even to the very first time I looked her up, I found that, and what my judgment is, that could be true. She could have used it and could have written that post, but In looking at the account it came from, it looked like that account was a troll account of her. Wylona hardly wrote anything at all, and she never revealed anything about her family. Why would she randomly break that to give a glimpse into her family? Why would she suddenly make a dumb joke? She didn't make jokes at all. Also, Wylona later on claimed her mom died, and she posted funeral pictures, and it's not the same woman as the post with the N-word that was making a joke about her mom. I don't know if her mom really died. I don't know if those pictures are legit, and it looked like it came out of a movie set, but I don't want to post it out of risk. Maybe Wylona did use the N-word, maybe she didn't. But my issue with is, even if she didn't, she still should have addressed it. Yes, I know that would have broken the mysterious persona, but come on, you don't leave that kind of accusation unchecked. It gives the impression that you don't care about the matter, which is a huge issue. But was that enough to stop her? No. Wylona's rocket still had light years to go before it burned out.
Wylona's business.
This is what I consider the crowning achievement of Wylona's tenure. She had a sponsorship. Wow. How does that even happen in Tumblr of all places? With her star power, although not bright, it did have this very unique glow. Unique enough to attract something I just have not seen with any Tumblr celebrity, a sponsorship. So I have to go into a bit of the demise of Tumblr to explain it. Tumblr didn't change much since it started, but its reputation did a lot. A lot of people say that Tumblr banning nudity was the end of it, or even the election, which kind of changed the landscape of social media and made Tumblr seem irrelevant. I mean, it was a very social justice site, so it didn't even feel political, because really only one kind of political view was accepted there, and didn't really mesh well with what was going on with the rest of the world with the election of Trump. So the first major shakeup of Tumblr was when it was bought by Yahoo. Tumblr lovers themselves were in an uproar about this. I think it really had more the fact to do that Tumblr always felt like it was an independent space, an independent art space that had more intimacy. So news of it being, even though it already was a big corporation, I mean, of course it was, the fact that news it was being bought by a bigger corporation took away from feeling that you were in a digital space that really catered to your individual needs rather than just was trying to milk you for your dollars, like Facebook. But I think Tumblr needed to have been bought to survive, just not by Yahoo. I said this before, in order for a social media site to live on, it needs to produce internet celebrities. They set the standard for what the platform should be promoting. They set the trail for the algorithm to find similar content to expand the pool of fans that the platform can profit off of. Vine fell because they never implemented an ad system and they could never pay their top tier users. Those users had to transfer their followings to other platforms in order to keep their careers. Vine was bought by Twitter, but Twitter never invested more into the platform. It actually seems like Twitter has a really weird habit of buying companies. These companies Twitter buys has a good set of mini celebrities, but then Twitter just kills all of their careers. Twitter did this with Periscope. There were journalists who were legitimately using Periscope as a way to live broadcast like protests they were going to. The CEO and founder of Twitter, was he the CEO and founder? Somebody high up at Twitter, one of the founders, started the blogging site Medium. And Medium did have some some minorly famous writers on there, but the platform itself never really did anything to advance those writers' star power. Twitter was not doing enough to turn their influencers' following into an established brand. Geez, Twitter really is like the Grim Reaper when it comes to companies they buy or start. Tumblr needed to have been bought because Tumblr needed to implement an ad and payment system to sustain itself. A payment system to also be able to pay its content creators. And to have a payment system, you need a lot of capital to start it. So you need a lot of money up front to start giving money to those content creators so they can start producing content that'll bring in ad dollars later on. At the time of being bought by Yahoo, the CEO of Yahoo was Marissa Mayer, and well, I could go into a lot about her. She was a very girl boss CEO, and that was not a great fit for Tumblr. She was so out of touch because while Tumblr maybe wasn't producing the biggest internet celebrities like Vine, YouTube, Instagram, and even the BuzzFeed Huffington Post blogger section, the artists on there had pretty cult followings. It could have been a mecca for independent artists the way SoundCloud, Spotify, and Wattpad, and even fanfiction.com became, and DeviantArt, I guess. Yahoo did implement an ad system, but I never heard anything about Tumblr celebrities getting a cut of that ad payment, which is just shortchanging them. And also the ad system Yahoo had was just weird. I don't know if anyone else remembers it. In the Tumblr user feed was called a dashboard, and the ad system was people could pay to have an ad pinned to the top of the dashboard, kind of like pinning a comment in the comments section. Okay, so I never bought through ads on Tumblr. It was weird because to make sure a Tumblr user's dashboard wasn't too clogged, they could only have one pin at a time. So they would only see one ad at a time. Not like YouTube with mid-rolled ads and banner ads and all that kind of stuff. And I'd imagine that ad system, while maybe it does make for a less annoying experience so you're not bombarded with ads, it also limits the reach of anyone who's buying ad space. Because if you're buying ad space, and every user who sees your ad is only going to see one ad at a time, that means that the ad space for your user is very competitive, and nobody is really going to benefit from it because the reach is so small. Because what if all the users on the demographic you want to give ads for, their dashboard already has a pin from another ad buyer, so you have to wait your turn essentially. Also, Tumblr tried to create their own in-house magazines, which those kinds of things I think are very hit and miss when it comes to platforms, but there was a huge writing base on Tumblr, so actually, I mean, if a platform was to create a publication, Tumblr I think would have had the best chance. But were any writers from Tumblr itself recruited for those publications? No. But okay, even if the platform isn't paying its influencers, the influencers themselves, or the closest thing to influencers, can attract sponsorships, right? Some Viners had sponsorships. Well, that's the problem. See, Tumblr girls weren't really considered ad-friendly by companies. I mean, what company would want to have their product associated with an underage anorexic girl posting porn of herself? But with Wylona, even though she may not have been the most famous Tumblr girl, and even though she had some problems around her, she was affiliated with all the right scenes and right subcultures, and she didn't have any apparent issues that would deter potential sponsors. So Wylona had an affiliation with a company called Killstar. If that sounds like a knockoff of Doll's Kill, it kind of is. Actually, I don't know which company came first, and I can't bother to look it up. I don't need to explain the aesthetic. It's so anime fangirls wanting something to wear to buy manga, or a night out at a karaoke bar at Halloween. I doubt Wylona was being paid much, if anything, but she was probably getting a lot of free stuff, and Killstar, they actually featured her on their social medias also. That really was the most an underground social media fashionista could ask for in the early 2010s. She was also recruited by some other brands to model for them. That is some Tumblr hustling. Wylona's invasion. This is a strange thing to talk about, and it kind of fits in with the modeling portion. Tumblr was a very sex-positive place before that was a term. And by sex-positive, I don't mean porn like OnlyFans, but the line between that could get very blurred. Tumblr could be a place where Tumblr models could gain a fan base by basically being nude models, but nude models more as an art form and not something to jerk off to, though I'm sure plenty of that was happening. In the sex-positive spaces on Tumblr, there were a lot of Asian fetish blogs, and even though Wylona was whitewashing herself, I think she was considered just Asian enough for some of those fans of those circles to really enjoy Wylona as a model and some of her more risque pictures. Either way, Wylona did weave some sexiness into her pics, at least with her more mainstream modeling ones. She could be a little more tongue-in-cheek with it. And I'll get into the more sexual aspect of her modeling later. But Wylona did have another kind of sex appeal as well that thrived in the Tumblr space. The glamorous sex worker. She wasn't an OnlyFans girl, far from it, but she definitely gave off this hot girl who could command drinks at a bar vibe. But you might be thinking lots of people online are sexy without being pornographic. What made Wylona different? Tumblr had the secret power to make not porn go viral, but anything porn adjacent, and Wylona also filled that gap.
Covering slowly, but now slowly thinking that those words are still me. Thought I wrote this last week. Am I still the same?
Another Another sexual fan base that fueled Wylona's fame was the Pro-Ana group. This was more of a minor part of her fan base, but one that's very telling. Wylona made it onto Skinny Gossip, which I've covered in another video. They milked Pro-Ana pictures and blended it with sexualization. I don't think Wylona ever had an eating disorder, but I can see why her body fit into that Pro-Ana fetish mold. I think why Wylona made it into that realm was not necessarily because of her thinness, or her sexuality, but again, I think her heavy use of Photoshop and high efforts to tailoring her image. The Pro-Ana symbol is the blue butterfly, which is about transforming from something heavy to something light and free. Wylona obviously was doing transforming with her borderline cosplay and many of the sub-styles, and her heavy use of Photoshop. I think Pro-Ana appropriated her image as a message, again, because of her ambiguity and people being able to pull a certain message from it. And I think the message they were pulling was that Wylona was very obviously transforming herself with her heavy use of, again, Photoshop, makeup, and all that. And like I said, Wylona wasn't mainly known as a sexual figure. At least it wasn't the main part of her branding. But sex, I think, played more a part of her life than she let on. Wylona's Secret Garden. So Wylona actually had a few different names. She went by Wylona Forest sometimes because her Tumblr was called Wylona Forest. When her real name was leaked as Lim Pei Shi, sometimes she went by Wylona Lim Pei Shi, and she also went by Wylona Rin. Wylona Rin is interesting because I think that name had a specific purpose. Wylona Rin was around for as long as she was Wylona Hayashi. But the thing is, Wylona Rin doesn't really reveal anything else about herself, but it was used interestingly. So if you ever watched my video on how I got plagiarized, I explained how keywords are exploited for ad revenue. Another way this is done is on porn sites, where they use celebrities' name. If you Google Beyonce's name enough, and you keep going to the back pages of Google, you're gonna get a search result that says Beyonce sex tape. Porn websites use celebrity names to milk for clicks, even if the celebrity is not actually in that pornographic video. That was the case with big and small celebrities also. So I kept wondering, why was Wylona Rin associated so much with porn sites? There were so many search results with Wylona Rin sex tape. She's not in any of them. But why was that name so associated with porn and not Hayashi? Then I thought, wait a minute. Was Wylona Rin created to house a different section of her online presence, so that way Hayashi wouldn't then turn up those kinds of results? Maybe it was another persona to basically section off and isolate another part of her internet activity. What was Wylona Rin hiding away from Wylona Hayashi? It's like a secret door to a room. Being racy was always part of Wylona's brand. But Wylona Hayashi was never associated with full-on nudity like an OnlyFans, but Wylona Rin in the Google search results is. I found a set of nude photos exclusively associated with the search results of Wylona Rin. I do think there was a chance Wylona was at one point working as a sex worker. All of her Tumblr posts are gone, but posts that were reblogged do remain because they're on other blogs. And this one is interesting. It actually is a comment from her Tumblr account that was commenting on another website that I assume also had a Tumblr account, so they just all synchronized.
Many Mumbai escort service providers offer lists of Indian escort services and escort gallery for their clients to look through types of services, offers, and recompense detail listed in their websites. It means you can get an artist for your party without thinking about shooting up your budget, but also without making any extra effort. The medical loss ratio, MLR, requires that the amount spent by the insurance company in providing clinical services and for quality improvement should be proportionate to the premiums paid by the policy holder. That was commented by Wylona/Hayashi.tumblr.com on February 9th, 2015.
You can see that that's her Tumblr URL, Wylona.Hayashi. That's an interesting knowledge of a sex worker and the sex work industry. It would explain why Wylona Rin is exclusively associated with more racy content. And I'm not shaming Wylona for being a whore. I think Wylona just never really invested more than the bare minimum into Wylona the persona, because it was always a game to her. She had a whole other life completely different than what we knew about her from her online. I found this listing of Wylona having attended the National University of Singapore, which from what I looked up is a prestigious university. So she had an academic side. I think eventually Wylona stopped because she moved on to her just regular life. It was all a game and we were just the guests. But I think her fans knew it was a game and they knew it was fake and they loved it. It's interesting because some of the most iconic shows from our childhood are people living ridiculous double lives, like Hannah Montana. But eventually it came to an end because we knew that it was really Miley wearing a wig. And although Wylona never figuratively took off the wig, we still got our fill fangirling over her because in a way, we all felt like the friends Hannah Montana had who knew her real identity. Essentially, Wylona gave us the adult Hannah Montana life that we wanted to live, and we could feel like her real life friends that were helping her live it.
Wylona Rin was another name Wylona was using for a long time. This appears to have been her more secretive Tumblr account, which a lot of people did. So it's interesting because this account, it has a link tree, and a lot of the social medias on this link tree are still in active use. Like, we'll go to this Instagram here with Wylona, and you can see, well, there's nothing on it but the stories. Take a look at the stories. Look. It's apparently a repost of Wylona's TikTok, which she's still using. Interesting, you can see. So I don't know if this is an impersonator or if this is actually her.